Tonight we'll journey together through a moonlit forest of stillness, as the master archer takes his first breath before the bow. A hush settles in the air, and the world beyond your walls slowly dissolves into mist. Somewhere between wakefulness and sleep, you find yourself walking a soft path lined with pine needles and quiet stars. The breeze moves gently across your skin as if brushing away the remains of the day. The crickets sing low songs of ancient wisdom, and the trees breathe with you, each inhale drawing you deeper into the stillness, each exhale releasing everything you no longer need to carry. The moon hangs in perfect silence above a still pond, and its reflection reminds you, even the most brilliant lights shimmer and change. All things shift, all things pass. And in this impermanence there is peace. Before you settle into a comfortable position, take a breath, and, if it feels right for you, consider supporting this channel with a like and subscription. Feel free to share where you're listening from in the comments below. Every presence here is like a firefly in the night, brief, beautiful, and meaningful. Now, let your body become heavy against whatever is supporting you. Take one deep breath with me now. And as you exhale, know that you've just taken the first step on a journey that has been waiting for you since the beginning of time. You find yourself standing before a small wooden gate, barely taller than your chest. Beyond it lies a hidden garden, cloaked in mist. The gate creaks open at the touch of your hand, and as you pass through, the world transforms. You are no longer in your own time or place. You are in the world of the master archer. The garden is still. Trees bow slightly under the weight of early frost, and the stones beneath your feet are worn smooth by generations. Lanterns cast warm halos of light along a stone path, and somewhere nearby, the sound of a bowstring hums like the first chord of a song. It is neither loud nor soft, but certain, like the quiet decision to let go. In the center of this garden stands a man, not young, not old, his robe simple, his posture relaxed. He holds a bow, not raised to strike, but resting gently in his hand like a bird waiting to fly. His eyes are closed, and he breathes in a rhythm so steady, so deliberate, that you feel your own breath slowing to match. He is the master archer. He does not speak yet, but somehow you already understand. This journey will not be about hitting a target. It will be about becoming the arrow. Beside him, a younger monk kneels, watching. His eyes are full of questions. He has come far in search of perfection, his fingers calloused from countless arrows, his mind a flurry of self-doubt and determination. And yet here, in the presence of the master, he says nothing. The silence between them speaks more clearly than words. The master opens his eyes and, without looking, lifts the bow and draws a single arrow from the quiver. He holds it for a moment, and you notice how gently his fingers cradle the shaft, as though recognizing the story it carries. He draws back slowly, without strain, without ambition. Just breath, just motion. Then he releases. The arrow arcs into the cold morning air and lands in a bale of straw 50 paces away with a soft thump. The shot was true, yet no celebration follows. No nod of approval. The master simply lowers the bow and exhales. The young monk finally speaks. How do you do it without thinking, without aiming? The master smiles, not mockingly, but as one who remembers asking the same question long ago. To aim, he says softly, is to disturb the stillness. To strike without aim is to become the stillness itself. The monk furrows his brow. But how can I strike what I do not aim at? By not seeking to strike, the master replies. Only then will your arrow know where to go. And here the first Zen teaching is quietly revealed, non-striving. In many traditions, including Zen, the path to mastery is not through force, but through release. Not through sharpening the will, but through softening the self. Some traditions believe that enlightenment comes not through gaining, but through losing, shedding effort, identity, and the ceaseless reaching that so often clouds the heart. The master tells a parable to the monk, and you listen as if the words are falling through your own chest. A young boy once asked his father to teach him to shoot. The father agreed, but only under one condition. The boy must first carry water from the stream to the garden every morning for 100 days. The boy obeyed, confused but determined. On the 100th day, the father gave him a bow, and when the boy drew it, his arms were already strong. When he stepped, his footing was already firm. And when he looked at the target, his vision was already clear. He loosed the arrow, and it struck the center. Not because he had aimed, but because he had become ready without realizing it. You pause. Feel that. Not just hear it, feel it. What if all your preparation is already preparing you for a moment you cannot yet see? The archer's garden begins to dissolve now, and you find yourself once again in the twilight between worlds. There's no rush, just stillness. You breathe, and for a moment, perhaps the first lesson of the master archer is that you do not need to reach for wholeness. You only need to stop resisting it. Let that idea rest within you. What if the aim of your life has never been a point but a path? The mist returns, curling gently around your ankles as you step further into the garden of the master archer. The stone path winds through slender trees, their trunks mottled with moss, their leaves catching glints of moonlight. Somewhere nearby, an owl calls once, then falls silent. Every sound feels purposeful. Every silence profound. Ahead, the monk stands alone in a snowy clearing, clutching his bow with both hands. It is morning, and the first snow of the season has fallen in perfect silence, blanketing the earth in a hush so deep it seems to mute even thought. His footprints mark a single path through the white, leading to a target, a round bale of straw set between two cedars. He has come to practice, but something holds him back. He draws the bow, inhales, and releases. The arrow lands far to the side, thudding awkwardly into the snow. He tries again. Another miss, frustration brews in his chest. He can feel it tight and hot, clenching his jaw, shortening his breath. Around him, the snow remains unmoved, but inside a storm begins. The master archer approaches, footsteps soundless upon the frost. He watches the young monk quietly, arms folded within his robe. When the monk notices him, he bows his head, ashamed. "I don't understand," the monk says, voice low. "Yesterday I struck the mark. Today I can't even come close." The master does not respond right away. Instead, he bends down and picks up a small clump of snow. He cradles it in his hand, watching it melt slowly under the warmth of his skin. "Tell me," he says softly, "does the snow choose where to fall?" The monk furrows his brow, unsure how to respond. "No, master." "And yet it always finds the ground." The master lets the snow fall from his hand, watching it disappear into the blanket below. "To strike true," he continues, "you must become like the snow. Fall where you fall, and trust that the earth is always beneath you." The monk listens, his breath beginning to slow. A calmness begins to return. It does not erase the frustration, it simply makes space around it. This moment introduces another timeless Zen teaching, non-attachment to outcome. You may pour your effort into preparation, intention, and presence, but the result is not yours to hold. In Buddhism, this is often called letting go of the fruits of action. Some traditions teach that the more tightly you cling to results, the more your actions become entangled with fear and pride. Imagine this for yourself. What if, instead of judging your worth by the arrows that hit or miss, you simply acknowledged the beauty of drawing the bow? The master then recounts an old tale passed down through the silent halls of the monastery. Long ago, a prince sought the wisdom of a legendary archer who lived in the mountains. The prince was ambitious and wished to defeat every enemy with unerring precision. When he found the archer, the old man gave him a single arrow and pointed to a distant tree. "Strike that knot in the bark," he said. The prince fired, missed, and cursed. The archer smiled and handed him the bow again. "Try once more, but this time forget the knot. Feel only the weight of the bow, the breath in your lungs, and the way your heart beats before release." The prince obeyed, and though he missed again, something shifted. The archer said, "You believe the arrow is your message to the world. But in truth, it is the silence before you release it that speaks loudest. Silence, breath, the quiet moments before the doing, these are what shape the outcome, even if they are invisible to others." You pause now, breathing in through your nose and out slowly through your mouth. Feel what it's like to not try. To simply be. There is no target here, only presence. The monk lowers his bow and looks to the snow where his arrows lie scattered. For a moment, he sees them not as failures but as footprints on the path, each one marking a step closer to something not yet visible. The master gently touches his shoulder. Do not aim to become better, he says. Aim to become empty. Only then will the arrow pass through you rather than from you. You reflect on this as the garden fades once more into shadow and breath. You are not here to win, not here to prove. You are here to learn the shape of your own stillness. And so the monk begins again. This time he draws the bow slowly, breath steady, not with hope, not with fear, but with a quiet readiness. The snow watches without judgment. The trees hold no score. The arrow flies, and wherever it lands, the practice remains sacred. As your body sinks deeper into rest, ask yourself, what if your path is not about reaching a mark, but about releasing everything that keeps you from being fully present? The clearing dissolves as mist curls upward like incense smoke, and once more you are carried gently along the quiet thread of time, flowing deeper into the master archer's world. You find yourself beside a pond in early morning. A faint golden light brushes across the still water, unbroken and clear. Nearby, the master archer kneels upon a flat stone, bow resting on his lap. His eyes are closed, his breathing slow and measured so subtle, it seems the wind breathes through him. The monk watches from a respectful distance, his own breath beginning to match the rhythm of the master's. In his hand he holds an arrow, but today he does not draw it. Why do we breathe so deliberately before each shot? He asks, not out of impatience but wonder. The master opens his eyes slowly and gazes out at the pond. Because each breath is the first movement of the arrow. The monk looks down at the arrow in his hand, confused. You see it as separate, the master says gently. The breath, the aim, the release, but they are one motion, one act. And when you understand that, the arrow no longer belongs to you. It belongs to the moment. He rises, walking to the pond's edge. A single maple leaf floats across the surface, carried by the gentlest breeze. In some schools, the master continues, the greatest archers do not aim at all. They prepare the body, quiet the mind, and release the arrow with full presence, but no desire. The arrow finds its own path. The monk tilts his head. Is that not dangerous? What if it misses? The master smiles. To miss, he says, is not the greatest failure, but to strike without awareness, that is a deeper loss. This is the Zen principle of unity in action, the dissolving of boundaries between breath, thought, motion, and result. In Buddhist teachings, it is akin to mindfulness. When action arises from stillness, without grasping or forcing, it becomes effortless, complete in itself. Some traditions describe this as the flowing moment, where archer bow and arrow dissolve into one continuous presence, no beginning, no end. The master lifts his bow now. No words, no explanation. He simply breathes in, draws the arrow, and lets go in the same motion fluid, uninterrupted, as though the bow had released itself. The arrow vanishes into the trees, no sound of impact, no target. The monk waits, expecting commentary, instruction, a parable. But the master only sits again and returns to breath. Did you mean to hit something? The monk asks. No. Then why did you shoot? The master's eyes do not open. To let go, he replies. In this moment, the monk understands something he cannot explain. It passes through him like wind through reeds. He looks again at the arrow in his hand. And for the first time, it feels less like a tool and more like a teacher. That night, as the moon climbs into a bed of stars, the monk walks alone through the forest trails that wrap around the temple. His bow is slung across his back, but he does not seek to practice. Instead, he listens. To the crunch of his footsteps in dry leaves, to the distant rustle of a fox, to the way his breath comes and goes like waves upon a distant shore. He finds a small glade and sits. The bow rests beside him, untouched. His thoughts swirl and then settle. For a long time, there is nothing, just quiet, and then a sound. A faint snapping of twigs barely there. The monk's body responds before thought can catch up. In one smooth, instinctive motion, he draws an arrow, nocks it, breathes, and aims toward the sound. But something stops him. The rustling becomes clearer, and from the underbrush emerges not danger, but a deer calm, gentle, watching him with deep, liquid eyes. The monk lowers his bow, not out of fear or indecision, but out of clarity. He bows his head slightly to the deer, and it pauses, then continues through the glade, disappearing into moonlight and shadow. Later, the master listens to this story and nods. "That," he says, "was your truest shot." The monk looks puzzled. "But I didn't release the arrow, exactly." In that instant, the monk realizes that true mastery does not always mean action. Sometimes, the greatest alignment of breath, thought, and presence is in stillness. The readiness to act, but also the wisdom not to. As your own breath deepens now, consider this. What if the perfect shot is not in hitting a target, but in knowing when not to release the arrow at all? The night deepens and the veil of dreams grows thinner. You now walk along a narrow path of polished stones, flanked by tall ginkgo trees. Their fan-shaped leaves drift down in slow spirals, golden against the dark sky. Each step carries the hush of the past. The air is cool and still, and the world feels suspended in a breath that has not yet been exhaled. Ahead, the master archer stands beneath the oldest tree in the garden, its roots thick and twisted, anchoring it like a wise elder who has listened to centuries of wind. The young monk stands beside him, staring at the ground where a single yellow leaf has just fallen. The master says nothing at first. He simply gazes at the leaf, then closes his eyes. The monk waits, unsure if this is a lesson or merely silence. Then the master opens his eyes and speaks. "Did the leaf fall because it was pushed or because it let go?" The monk blinks. "Because it let go?" The master nods. "Much like the arrow," he continues, "it finds its path not through effort but release." He kneels and gently places the leaf in the monk's palm. When the time is right, letting go is not loss. It is return. The monk watches the delicate veins of the leaf, intricate as the lines on his own hand. He thinks of all he has held on to: expectation, fear, the idea of perfection. And he wonders, what would it mean to fall like a leaf? This moment holds the Zen teaching of non-resistance, the art of yielding, of not opposing the natural flow. In Buddhism, this is often compared to water. It does not fight, yet wears down stone. Some teachers have said, to bend is to survive, to yield is to understand. The master tells an old parable, voice as soft as wind. A young bamboo shoot once envied the oak tree beside it. "You are tall and strong," said the bamboo. "No storm can move you." The oak replied, "Yes, but I have broken many times. My strength is also my burden. One day a great storm came. The oak resisted, it snapped. The bamboo bent low, touching the earth, and when the winds passed, it rose again. The forest was quiet once more, but only the bamboo still stood." The monk listens and traces the shape of the ginkgo leaf. He places it on the wind and watches it float away, a small golden echo of the story. Later, the two sit beneath the tree, their silence easy now. The master prepares tea with slow, practiced movements. Steam rises in thin threads, and the scent of roasted leaves warms the air. The monk speaks, his voice gentle. "I've spent so much time trying to be still, trying not to feel doubt or fear, but now it feels like stillness is something I enter when I stop trying." The master hands him a cup and nods. "Stillness is not absence," he replies. "It is presence without resistance." The tea is warm and bitter, anchoring. The monk sips it slowly, and as he drinks, he feels his thoughts settle like sediment in clear water. He remembers the frustration of missed shots, the tension in his shoulders, the burning need to control the outcome. And he sees now how these things rose not from failure, but from resistance. Some traditions teach that resistance is the birthplace of suffering, that when we tighten ourselves against what is, we harden into shapes that cannot bend and cannot heal. You might recall moments in your own life when you resisted, times you clung to being right, being safe, being certain. And perhaps you too found that in the letting go, in the softening, something truer emerged. The garden dims as clouds roll across the moon. The ginkgo leaves shimmer like soft lanterns above. In this quiet hour, the monk lies back upon the grass and watches the canopy shift with the breeze. He no longer clutches questions. He allows them to rest beside him, unanswered. He hears the master say, more thought than speech, "You cannot stop the leaf from falling, but you can fall with it." A gentle stillness settles in your body now, as if some part of you has exhaled without noticing. The lesson of the leaf does not ask you to abandon your direction, only to loosen your grip. The bow does not fight the arrow, the hand does not cling to the string, the breath does not hold itself, and so the shot is released. And so the leaf returns to earth, and so, perhaps, can you? What if the calm you seek has been waiting not in effort, but in your willingness to fall gently into this moment? The wind carries you gently now, like a feather resting on a breath. As you drift deeper into this journey, the quietude around you becomes richer, fuller, more alive. The stars above pulse with slow, ancient rhythms, and the trees sway like old friends in unspoken conversation. You are not walking now, you are simply moving with the world, as though it carries you in its palm. You find yourself in a quiet corner of the monastery garden where stones form a loose circle around a shallow pool. The moonlight dances on its surface, silver and soft, and the water reflects everything: sky, branch, silence, but holds none of it. You notice a clay bowl placed gently on the pool's edge. Its rim is chipped. A fine crack runs down one side like a scar. And yet, inside the bowl, moonlight gathers. The monk kneels beside it, gently running his fingers over the surface. His face shows neither disappointment nor judgment, only wonder. He turns to the master, who watches nearby. "This bowl is broken," the monk says softly. The master responds with a half-smile. "And still it holds the moon." The monk tilts his head, understanding beginning to rise like a slow dawn. "In Japan," the master continues, "some repair broken pottery with gold, not to hide the crack, but to honor it. The break becomes part of the beauty. Some traditions believe that what is flawed is what allows the light to enter. This is the Zen teaching of wabi-sabi, the appreciation of imperfection, impermanence, and incompleteness. In Buddhist philosophy, it reflects the first noble truth: life contains suffering, and it is through this suffering, not despite it, that we awaken to compassion, wisdom, and deeper presence. The master tells a story and you lean in, feeling the edges of your own experiences soften in its reflection. Once, there was a monk who had only one possession, a bowl used each morning for his rice. One day it slipped from his hands and cracked. He wept not because of the bowl, but because he believed he had failed to be mindful. His teacher saw him grieving and offered him a needle and thread. "But I cannot sew clay," the monk said. "Then stop trying to repair what was never whole," the teacher replied. And so the monk began to eat from the cracked bowl, not with sorrow, but with gratitude. And in time he noticed the cracks let the steam rise in soft spirals, and each breath before the first bite became a prayer. The monk, listening to the master, sighs gently and looks again at the chipped bowl. He sees it not as broken, but as true. The crack tells its story, it does not lie. Later, as dawn approaches and the stars begin to fade, the monk returns to the training yard. He picks up his bow, not with anxiety, but with reverence. The string feels familiar beneath his fingers, not tight, not slack, just right. He does not rush, he does not delay. He breathes, draws, releases, the arrow sails, its arc graceful, and though it lands just shy of the mark, he does not flinch. Instead, he bows to the bow, the arrow, the shot, and even the miss, all of it sacred, all of it part of the whole. Some teachers describe enlightenment not as a brilliant flame, but as an understanding that nothing needs to be changed for wholeness to be present. That even the parts we consider flawed, the misfires, the cracks, the falters, are not obstacles but invitations. As your own breath flows in and out now, consider this truth within yourself. The places where you feel broken, unfinished, or uncertain, can you see them as the very places where the light might gather? Where the moonlight reflects not in spite of the crack, but because of it. The monk walks slowly back to the pond and places the bowl in the water, watching it float and turn slightly in the breeze. The moon still clings to its surface, soft and quiet. And perhaps now you understand. Perfection is not what you achieve, it is what you allow. The bowl is whole, not because it is unbroken, but because it contains everything exactly as it is. And so do you. What if the cracks in your life are not blemishes to hide, but openings to let in the moonlight? You drift now through a world of shadows and softened light, where dawn has not yet arrived and the air is full of possibility. Each step forward brings you deeper into stillness, as if you are walking into the very heart of the present moment. The path ahead is lined with lanterns, dim, golden, pulsing gently like a breath held in reverence. They do not guide you toward any destination. They simply light the way for wherever you happen to be. The training ground is silent. Frost clings to the grass in delicate filigree, and your footsteps make no sound. You see the master standing alone. His bow is cradled loosely in his hand, and his eyes are open but not fixed on anything. He is not waiting. He is simply there, alert but relaxed, present without grasping. The young monk arrives shortly after, bow in hand, and hesitates. He feels the weight of the morning, the silence, the cold, the pressure of his own thoughts. He wants to ask a question, but senses that the moment calls for stillness. So he breathes. He steps into the center of the field. He draws the bow slowly. But just before releasing the arrow, something inside him pulls tight. A single thought arises: I must strike the mark. And in that moment of tension, just one thought, the stillness is broken. He looses the arrow. It veers off course. The monk lowers the bow, shoulders tense. The master walks toward him, stopping a few paces away. There is no disappointment in his face, only gentleness, as if he recognizes a path he once walked himself. You disturbed the moment, the master says softly. The monk looks up, confused. But I was focused, I was ready. The master kneels, brushing a patch of frost from a flat stone. Readiness is not the same as tension, he explains. To be ready is to be open, but to be tense is to fight what is already perfect. He gestures around them. This morning, this breath, this arrow, all already complete. You only needed to step into them, but instead you tried to shape them. This is the Zen principle of effortless presence. In many traditions, it is understood that true mastery comes not from willpower, but from harmony with the moment. Some masters have said that when the body, mind, and breath are unified, the action takes itself. There is no doer, only the doing. To illustrate, the master shares another story. A woman once asked a calligraphy master how to make her brushstrokes perfect. He replied, "Hold the brush like a baby bird, firm enough that it does not fall, soft enough that it does not break." She practiced for years, adjusting pressure, posture, breath, but her lines remained uneven. One day she gave up. Exhausted, she sat at her desk and simply let her hand move. The ink flowed. The brush danced. The lines were alive, and she wept not for the skill she had found, but for the struggle she had finally let go. The master looks at the monk, who listens with quiet intensity. "Do you see?" He says, "Perfect form is not made, it is allowed." The monk nods, eyes softening. He realizes now that his greatest obstacle has not been the wind or the bow or even the target, but the tightness in his own chest. The need to prove, to achieve, to strike the mark. He closes his eyes. This time he breathes not to prepare, but to return. Inhale, exhale. Again, he draws the bow not with tension, but with curiosity. He watches how the wood bends, how the string hums, how his fingers respond with their own intelligence. There is no urgency. He releases. The arrow flies, and though he does not see where it lands, he feels a deep calm settle in his belly. The master smiles. "You did not aim," he says. "No," the monk replies. "I didn't need to." In your own life, you might notice the places where you brace, where you strive, where your breath shortens and your shoulders rise. These are signs not of failure, but of forgetting. Forgetting that presence does not need to be earned. It only needs to be allowed. Some traditions describe this as effortless doing, what the Taoists call wu wei, action without force. Movement without struggle. It is not passive, it is deeply alive. And you might ask yourself now, with kindness, where am I gripping too tightly? Where can I loosen, soften, breathe? Let the question float through your mind like a lantern on water. The monk stands taller now, not because he is proud, but because he is light. The bow rests at his side, no longer a tool to conquer the mark, but a companion to his breath. And in that moment, you feel it too, a softening in your chest, a lengthening of your breath, a quiet readiness that asks for nothing, yet holds everything. What if the most perfect moments in your life arise not from trying, but from your willingness to fully be where you already are? The mist rises once more, curling like a scroll unrolling in slow motion, revealing yet another chapter on this journey of breath, bow, and being. You find yourself in a quiet hall of the monastery, lit only by the faint flicker of candlelight. Wooden beams stretch overhead like the ribs of a great sleeping whale. The floor beneath you creaks gently, whispering stories of footsteps long past. Tonight the master invites the monk into silence, no bow. No arrows, no movement. Just a mat, a flickering candle, and the slow rhythm of presence. Sit here, the master says, and ask yourself this: who releases the arrow when there is no target? The monk furrows his brow. Is this a riddle? The master nods. A koan, not to be solved, but to be entered. And so they sit. Hours pass. The candle dances, but the room remains quiet. The monk's thoughts swirl, about practice, about hitting the mark, about proving his worth. He notices each one and, like leaves on a river, lets them drift. Then a thought rises like a whisper. What if the target is not out there at all? His breath stills. The master's voice breaks the silence at last, soft and steady. You seek the target with your eyes, but the truest aim begins behind them. This is the Zen tradition of the inner Kona question that cannot be answered by intellect, only by presence. A paradox designed to exhaust the grasping mind until all that remains is awareness itself. Some Zen masters describe it as pointing to the moon by using a finger of smoke. If you follow the finger too literally, you miss the light. To illustrate, the master tells an old tale. A blind archer lived in a village where contests were held each year. Though he could not see, he won every match. His secret was this: he did not aim where others did. He listened for the stillness between heartbeats. He felt the shift in air. One day, a challenger mocked him, saying, "You strike only because you memorize the field." The blind man asked to be led into the forest, alone, with a single arrow. He fired into the trees. A moment later, a soft thud. When the others followed, they found an apple split in two, resting at the foot of a cedar. The archer said, "I do not hit the target. I simply disappear into the moment and it strikes through me." The monk listens, eyes wide. He has spent years perfecting posture, breath, and stance, but now he sees that true mastery may lie beyond technique. "It's not about the arrow, is it?" he says softly. The master smiles. "The arrow is only the question. The flight is the path, the release is the answer." The candle sputters gently, and darkness grows deeper, but the monk feels more light within him than ever before. He returns to the training yard the next day, but something has shifted. He no longer seeks to correct himself at every turn. His breath is not a preparation, but a sanctuary. He does not grip the bow. He holds it as one would hold a truth carefully, but without fear. He places an arrow on the string. The wind rustles the bamboo. A raven calls from the rooftop. He draws the bow, and in that still, eternal instant before the release, he does not ask what the target is. He simply allows the motion to complete itself. The arrow flies. He does not watch. Instead, he closes his eyes. He listens. And for the first time, he hears not the thump of the strike, but the silence that follows. A vast, perfect stillness. Some traditions say that enlightenment is not an achievement, but a remembering. Not a thunderclap, but a soft return. You might reflect on this now. In your life, where have you chased clarity only to find it when you stop searching? Where have you held on too tightly to questions that were never meant to be answered, but lived? Let that wondering stay with you, not like a puzzle to solve, but like a bell echoing through a quiet room. The monk turns to the master, who nods once. "You did not strike the target," he says. The monk bows. "No," he replies, "but I believe I struck the moment." The master's eyes shine with approval. "That," he says, "is the true mark." And so the candle burns low, and the night wraps around you like a robe. You do not need to understand it all. You only need to be here, breathing, listening, present. What if the answer you've been seeking has been waiting, not in knowing, but in simply being with the question? A soft rain begins to fall. It is not the rain of storm or sorrow, but of cleansing, a slow, tender rhythm that hushes the world into deeper stillness. Each drop lands like a breath against the leaves, and you move through the garden under the wide arms of a cedar tree, sheltered but not hidden. The scent of wet earth rises around you, grounding you in the now. The master archer stands beneath the open sky, face turned upward, eyes closed. Rain collects on his shoulders and rolls down the folds of his robe. He does not move. He receives. Nearby, the young monk watches, uncertain whether to speak, to wait, or to simply join him in the silence. Eventually he does what the moment calls for. He listens. Not to the master, but to the rain, to his own breath, to the gentle tremble of his thoughts, softening in the presence of something greater than himself. The master opens his eyes slowly, as though waking not from sleep, but from the deep quiet of presence. "Do you hear it?" he asks. "The rain?" the monk replies. "No," the master smiles, "the silence beneath it." They listen again, and this time the monk hears it, not the absence of sound, but the vast, living stillness that holds every drop, every rustle, every heartbeat. This is the Zen teaching of deep listening, not just to sound, but to the spaces between. Not only to what is spoken, but to what is. In Buddhism, this is known as shunyata, emptiness, not as void, but as the fertile, open field in which all things arise and dissolve. Some traditions believe that the true message is always in the pause, that the breath between words contains the full weight of meaning. The master walks forward and hands the monk a bow. It is damp, the string slightly loose from the moisture. The monk hesitates. "Should I wait?" he asks. The master shakes his head gently. The rain does not ask if the arrow is ready, nor should you. The moment does not wait for perfection, it waits for presence. The monk nods slowly, then draws the bow. He breathes in the cool air, the scent of cedar, the gentle rhythm of falling drops. He does not aim, he listens. He becomes the pause before the sound. He releases. The arrow flies, slicing through rain and air alike. No thump follows, only silence. And in that silence something awakens. Later, the master tells a story more felt than told. There once was a boy who lived in a village of noise. Every day, people shouted their truths across the square. Drums beat, voices rose, the air was full of answers. But the boy could not find peace. One night, he followed the river into the woods and lay beside it. For days he said nothing. And slowly the silence began to speak, not in words, not in form, but in knowing. He returned to the village with no answers, only quiet. And when people shouted, he listened, not to argue, not to agree, but to feel the truth hiding beneath their noise. In time, others began to fall silent around him, and in that silence they healed. The monk hears this story not with his ears, but with his whole being. He feels the rain become less of a distraction and more of a teacher, each drop a bell, each pause an invitation. You too might recall a moment in your life when listening changed everything, not because you received a solution, but because something in you became still enough to hear what was always there. Some say the wind speaks, the trees whisper, the rain sings, but only those who stop striving can hear them. And so the monk practices not just with the bow, but with his attention. He begins to hear things that were always present, the pause before the master speaks, the soft crackle of fire, the moment his breath changes just before he draws. He learns that every action is preceded by stillness, every word by silence, every arrow by a moment of listening. And in this, he begins to understand the deeper art of archery, not striking a mark, but entering into harmony with what already knows where to go. You feel this now in your own breath, the rise, the fall, the quiet between. Let your awareness rest there, not pushing, not guiding, just listening. What arises? What soft truths begin to echo beneath your thoughts? Perhaps they are not thoughts at all. Perhaps they are the voice of presence, calling you back to yourself. The monk places his bow down as the rain slows. He looks to the sky, not for answers, but in gratitude. The silence beneath the rain has become a part of him. As it becomes a part of you, what if everything you've been seeking is already speaking, quietly, gently, beneath the noise of your thoughts? The garden now rests beneath a veil of mist and memory. The rain has passed, leaving the world glistening, each leaf a mirror, each stone a silent witness to what has fallen and what has been let go. The air carries the scent of cedar and wet earth, a fragrance that feels both ancient and new, and in this freshness you follow the path toward a clearing where something sacred lingers. The monk is already there, kneeling beside the master, both facing an open field framed by trees. On the far end, a single bale of straw stands like a sentinel. One arrow rests beside the monk, and his fingers brush over it with reverence. The master speaks softly, his voice a warm thread woven into the silence. "One arrow," he says, "one life." The monk nods, though he does not yet fully understand. The master continues, eyes never leaving the field. "We are taught to believe we have infinite chances, that we can always draw again, release again, and in many ways that is true. But each moment, each breath, each arrow, only happens once." He turns to the monk. "How would you live if you believed this was the only arrow you'd ever shoot?" The monk does not answer with words. He lifts the bow, breath steady, spine aligned, not by tension, but by presence. His hand closes around the arrow. He draws, not with fear, but with fullness. He holds the breath, not to delay, but to listen. And then he releases, the arrow flies, not fast, not hard, but true. It strikes the target, center and silent. The monk exhales, but not in triumph. He closes his eyes and bows, not to the target, not to the arrow, but to the moment. This is the Zen teaching of living fully in each breath, the practice of treating every instant as complete, sacred, and singular. In Buddhist philosophy, this is known as Ichigo Ichi, often translated as one time, one meeting. The idea that every moment, every encounter is a once-in-a-lifetime event, never to be repeated, never to be recovered. Some traditions teach that even brushing your teeth, drinking water, or walking across a room can become an act of reverence if done with full attention. That the only true life is the one lived now, not later, not elsewhere. To illustrate, the master shares a parable. There once was a man who traveled to the top of a mountain to ask a sage the secret to enlightenment. The sage served him tea. As the man waited for a teaching, the sage poured tea slowly into a small cup. It filled, then overflowed. The man cried, "It's spilling." The sage said, "Yes, and so is your life. While you wait for the wisdom of the mountain, you've missed the wisdom of this cup." He added, "Drink while the tea is warm." There's no second sip of this moment. The monk listens, eyes wet not from sadness, but from the sheer, humbling intimacy of the teaching. Later, as the sun begins to rise behind the trees, painting the mist with gold, he walks the path alone. He carries no bow now. No arrows, only the echo of the lesson still blooming in his chest. He passes a stream and pauses to cup water in his hands. It is cold, sweet, alive, and he drinks it as though it were the only water in the world. In that moment, it is. You too are invited now into this practice. As you lie here, still and supported, can you give your full self to this one breath? Not the one before it, not the next. Just this one. Inhale. Feel it arrive like morning light through fog. Exhale. Feel it pass like an arrow vanishing into the trees. There is no need to grasp it, no need to judge it. This moment, just as it is complete. You may find yourself recalling times you rushed through your days or waited for the real moment to arrive. And perhaps now something inside you sees, this is the real moment. The monk returns to the master, hands empty, eyes bright. "I understand now," he says. "Every arrow is the only arrow." The master nods, and every step is the only path. And so the monk walks again, slowly, fully. You walk with him, not to reach anywhere, but to be here. What if your entire life, every joy, every sorrow, every breath has always been just one arrow, flying through the sky of now? You return now to the quiet training grounds, but they appear changed, not because the stones have shifted or the trees have moved, but because you have changed. Your eyes see more gently. Your breath touches the present moment with less demand. The sky above is brushed with early hues of rose and pearl, the kind of light that feels like a whispered invitation. Come, just be here. The young monk walks beside you, and in his hand there is no arrow. His quiver is empty. He reaches for another, but finds none. A flicker of doubt rises. How can I continue if I have nothing left to give? He wonders. The master, sensing the moment, approaches. You've run out. he says with a quiet smile. The monk nods. I don't know what to do. Good, the master replies. The monk looks confused. How can it be good to have no arrows? The master gestures to the space between them. Now we begin. This is the Zen teaching of emptiness as potential, that only when we are emptied of assumption, control, or expectation can something new emerge. In Buddhist philosophy, the idea of mua, sacred nothingness, speaks to this truth. It is not the void of despair, but the clear, boundless space from which all things arise. Some traditions believe that the most fertile ground is that which has been cleared. That when we reach the edge of our tools, our knowledge, our certainty, we step into the beginning of real understanding. The master tells a story, a gentle wind threading through the leaves as he speaks. A man once traveled to seek wisdom from a monk renowned for his knowledge. When they sat, the monk served tea. As the visitor spoke of all he'd studied, books, rituals, philosophies, the monk poured until the cup overflowed. Stop, the man cried. It's full, the monk said. Yes, and so are you. If you wish to receive, you must first empty your cup. The monk listens, still clutching his empty quiver. The master gestures toward the straw target in the distance. Stand, he says. The monk obeys, though his hands feel strange without an arrow to hold. The bow alone seems incomplete. But he breathes. He places his feet. He draws the string as if an arrow were there. He exhales, and then he releases. Nothing flies. And yet something happens. He feels it. The movement, the breath, the focus, the stillness. And in that silent shot, a deeper truth arrives. Sometimes, the most profound practice is in not doing what we're accustomed to doing. Sometimes, in the absence of the object, the essence becomes clearer. The master nods approvingly. You see now, he says, that the arrow is not required for the practice to be whole. The form holds the spirit even when the hand holds nothing. The monk lowers the bow, his arms trembling, not from strain, but from awakening. He looks out across the training ground and sees not targets, but space, possibility. Later he walks alone through the cedar grove, feeling the lightness of his unburdened back. No quiver, no weight, and yet he does not feel empty. He feels spacious. He passes a stone bench where he once sat in frustration after a missed shot. He smiles now. Not at the memory, but at the boy he was, eager, grasping, hopeful, and whole. You might reflect on a time in your own life when something was taken away, an opportunity, a relationship, a sense of certainty. And perhaps now you see that in that emptiness there was space for something else to emerge. Stillness, growth, presence. Some teachings suggest that what we call emptiness is actually the space where life breathes most freely. And so, as you lie here now, your own hands holding nothing, ask yourself, can I let this be enough? This breath? This silence? This gentle space inside me where no arrow needs to fly? Let your breath deepen, let your body soften, let go of effort. Even in emptiness you are held. Even in stillness you are moving. The monk returns to the master at dusk. He bows, still holding his bow with no arrow. I understand now, he says. The quiver is not what makes me whole. The master nods, then gently replies, and still you carry everything. The wind shifts, gentle as a hand brushing silk, and the trees above sway in slow agreement with the rhythm of the world. The monk walks now through a bamboo grove, each stalk rising like a slender column of light, green and gold. The path beneath his feet is soft, cushioned with fallen leaves. There is no noise here, only the soft rustle of stalk against stalk, a sound like whispered advice from those who have learned to bend. The master joins him silently, appearing not with grandeur, but as if he had always been walking there beside him. They pause together, the wind moving between them. Why do we practice here? The monk asks, placing a hand on a smooth stalk of bamboo. The master smiles gently. Because the bamboo understands something we forget, the monk waits. It yields, the master continues. It bends with the storm, it does not resist. And because it does not resist, it does not break. This is the Zen teaching of flexibility over force, a principle deeply woven into both archery and life. In the Taoist-influenced teachings that often harmonize with Zen, strength is not measured by what resists change, but by what can move with it. like water or wind or bamboo. Some traditions say that the softest things in the world overcome the hardest, that what yields is what endures. To illustrate, the master shares a story known by many and told in many forms. Two trees grew side by side, one an ancient pine, thick and unmoving, the other a young bamboo, tall and supple. A great storm came, the wind howled through the forest. The pine stood rigid, proud in its strength. The bamboo bent low, brushing the earth. When the storm passed, the pine had splintered and fallen. But the bamboo stood tall once more, unharmed. And the forest, newly lit by the sun, whispered, "Strength is not in resistance, but in surrender." The monk touches the bamboo gently, feeling its quiet resilience. "I've always tried to be strong," he says, "to stand firm, to never falter." The master nods, "And you've grown tired." The monk lowers his gaze, and a single leaf drifts down to rest on his shoulder. "Yes, you don't have to hold it all," the master says. "You only have to respond." This lesson lands deeper than any before. The monk realizes he has been approaching the bough with a rigid, will-perfect posture, unyielding grip, breath controlled like a prisoner. But now, standing among the bamboo, he understands the bough is not something to master. It is something to dance with. Later, in the field, the monk lifts his bow once more. This time his stance is alive, not stiff. His knees are soft, his spine fluid. His breath flows in and out like a breeze between reeds. He draws the arrow not with force but with grace. He releases. The arrow curves with the wind not defying it but joining it. It strikes the mark, but the monk does not look. Instead, he listens to the sound the string makes as it stills. He feels the bow settle in his hand. He breathes. You may consider now where in your life you have held too tightly, stood too rigidly, or resisted what was asking to move through you. Perhaps your strength lies not in how firmly you stand, but in how deeply you are willing to bend. Flexibility does not mean weakness. It means wisdom. To know when to yield, to sense when to adjust, to allow yourself to change without losing your center. Some Zen masters say that the mark of a wise person is not their ability to command the world, but their ability to dance with it. And so the monk learns to dance with the wind, with the bough, with himself. He no longer seeks to fight the moment. He lets the moment shape him. And with each step, each breath, he feels lighter, not because his burdens are gone, but because he is no longer bracing against them. As night settles once more and the bamboo grove darkens, the monk turns to the master and bows. "Thank you for teaching me to bend," the master smiles. "No," he replies. "The bamboo taught you. I only pointed." You lie now in your own stillness, your own grove of quiet breath and soft surrender. What wind has passed through your life recently? What storms? And yet, you are still here. Still rooted, still rising. What if your truest strength has always been your ability to bend without breaking? The morning arrives gently, as though it too has been practicing mindfulness. Pale light seeps through the canopy, touching dew-kissed leaves and the edges of stones that line the garden's paths. In this softness, everything feels slower, more deliberate. Even time seems to bow its head before the stillness. The monk returns to the training ground. Today there is no instruction, no parable, only a quiet awareness shared between him and the master, who sits nearby beneath the spreading arms of a plum tree. The air is cool and dry, but then a gust of wind cuts across the field. The trees sway, the bough in the monk's hand trembles slightly. He steadies it, adjusting his grip. But the moment is already different. The stillness is gone. He draws the arrow. The wind shifts again. He hesitates, uncertain. Then he releases. The arrow arcs wildly, veering from its path. It strikes the outer ring of the target with a hollow thump. The monk lowers his bow, disappointment flickering in his chest. He turns to the master, expecting correction or critique. But the master simply says, "The wind aimed for you." The monk's brow furrows. Should I have waited? Would the wind have stopped? I could have corrected for it. The master shakes his head. You tried, the monk pauses, and that's the lesson. This is the Zen teaching of harmony with change, the understanding that not everything can be controlled, nor should it be. In Buddhist thought, this reflects the idea of anicca impermanence. The truth that everything changes, the body, the mind, the world. And it is in our relationship with that change, not our resistance to it, that peace is found. Some traditions teach that true balance is not about stillness, but responsiveness. That the archer's greatest skill is not to command the arrow, but to respond to the wind. The master tells a story as the breeze settles. There once was a boatman who crossed a river each day to bring supplies to the village. One morning, a sudden storm blew across the water. His oars cracked, his sail tore, his course shifted again and again. He did not curse the wind. He loosened his grip, let the boat turn. He adjusted, angled, leaned. And though he arrived late, he arrived intact. The villagers asked, "Did you fight the storm?" He said, "No, I listened to it." The monk breathes deeply, letting the story root itself within him. He thinks back to all the times he tightened in the face of change, when a routine was broken, a plan disrupted, a shot missed. And he realizes that in those moments, he treated the wind as an enemy, not a teacher. He picks up another arrow and draws again. This time, he does not brace. He watches the wind. He waits until it curls gently at his side like a companion. He breathes, releases. The arrow sails not straight, but beautifully curved, riding the air like a gull catching a thermal. It strikes the edge of the center, and the monk smiles, not because of where it landed, but because of how it flew. The master nods, satisfied. "You didn't fight," he says. "You joined." You may recall times in your life when something unexpected altered your path, when a sudden gust turned your aim. Perhaps it felt like failure or chaos. But what if it was the wind itself that guided you to something richer, something you could not have planned? Some teachings say that what looks like disruption may in fact be redirection. That the path of wisdom is not the one that avoids the storm, but the one that learns how to sail within it. Let yourself soften now. Feel the air around you, the subtle movements of your breath, the shifts of thought, of emotion. Do not hold them still. Notice them. Join them. You do not need to resist what is rising. You only need to be with it, to move with it. The monk lowers his bow and lets the wind lift his robes slightly. He smiles not at his aim, but at the freedom in letting go of control. The wind has become part of his practice. And perhaps it always was. What if the wind that seemed to throw you off course was never the obstacle, but the unseen guide that helped you fly? Dusk settles with the grace of a final bow, the sun lowering behind the hills, painting the sky in layers of copper, lavender, and quiet gold. Shadows stretch gently across the training yard, and lanterns flicker to life, their warm glow marking the shift from doing to being. Tonight, the master stands beside the monk once more. But something feels different. A deeper silence wraps around them, one not born from serenity alone, but from the still hush of disappointment. The monk stares at a straw target. 3 arrows lie in the dirt nearby. None struck the mark. His face is still, but his breath betrays the storm, shallow, tight, uncertain. He doesn't look at the master, but speaks into the quiet. "I failed." The master's reply is soft, without hesitation. "No, you missed." The monk turns to him, eyes searching. "Isn't that the same?" The master shakes his head gently. "Not at all." He picks up one of the fallen arrows and brushes off the dust. "Failure," he says, "is when you stop seeing the practice. Missing is part of it." The monk lowers his gaze. "But I should be better by now." The master places the arrow in his hand. "This is not about being better. This is about being present." This is the Zen teaching of compassion toward imperfection, the understanding that even the wise falter and even the masters miss. In Buddhist thought, this is reflected in karuna, the deep, tender compassion that begins with ourselves. Some traditions remind us that enlightenment is not the absence of error, but the acceptance of it as part of the path. To illustrate, the master tells a story. Voice like a steady flame in the cooling air. A monk once spent 10 years learning to walk across a narrow beam, suspended above a stream. Every day he tried. Every day he fell. On the 1000th day, he walked halfway, slipped, and landed in the water with a splash. As he climbed out, he laughed a deep, full laugh. His teacher, watching from the shore, bowed low and said, "At last, you've walked the whole way. The monk listens and feels a strange warmth rise in his chest, not pride, not shame, but something more honest. A soft acknowledgement of his humanity. I always thought the master never missed, he says. The elder smiles. I miss often, he replies. Just rarely in ways others can see. The two stand together in the twilight. The wind stills, a bird calls from the trees. The monk draws another arrow, not out of urgency, but from presence. He breathes not perfectly, but attentively. He draws not with tension, but with humility. He releases. The arrow strikes the edge of the target, not the center. Not perfection, but real. He bows to the bow, to the moment, to himself. Later he asks, what makes a master, then, if not perfection? The master replies, a master is one who misses fully. Who misses mindfully? Who keeps showing up? You may think now of your own so-called failures, those missed marks, those times you fell short or lost your way. And perhaps now, from this still place, you see that what mattered most was never the mark itself, but your presence within the process. Some teachings say that the moment you soften toward your imperfections is the moment they become doorways, not detours. You are not meant to be flawless. You are meant to be whole. And wholeness includes the cracks, the doubts, the days when you miss. Lie here now, letting that truth settle gently into your body. You are not broken for missing. You are becoming for trying again. You are growing for showing up. Breathe that in. The monk sits beside the fallen arrows, not to correct them, but to honor them. He gathers them gently, one by one, as if collecting sacred relics from his own journey. He places them back in his quiver, not as failures, but as footprints. Every miss, he says, taught me to see more clearly. The master nods. And every miss, he says, brought you closer than you realized. What if every time you missed the mark, you were still right on path because you remained present, kind, and willing to begin again? Night returns, not with fanfare, but with softness like a silk cloth draped gently across the sky. The stars blink into being one by one, each a quiet promise that even in darkness light endures. The air is cool now, kissed with the faint scent of pine resin and wood smoke. All is hushed, all is waiting. In the valley below the monastery, the monk and master stand together in silence. Their breath rises visibly in the chill, vanishing like old thoughts. The master lifts his hand and calls out across the wide space. Hey! His voice echoes back from the trees and stone, bouncing through the air. The monk watches with quiet curiosity. The master calls again, this time softer, a hum in the throat, a whisper across the ridgeline. Again, it returns. Why do we call out? The master asks. To hear what comes back, the monk suggests. The master nods, and what returns always matches what was sent. This is the Zen teaching of intention and reflection, the understanding that what we put into the world ripples outward and finds its way back to us. In Buddhism, this principle often appears in the teaching of karma not as a system of reward and punishment, but as a mirror. Every action, every word, even every thought echoes back in its own time. Some traditions say that our lives are shaped less by what happens to us and more by how we engage with the world. Our tone, our energy, the subtle posture of our presence. The master shares a story, his voice like footsteps in fresh snow. A traveler arrived in a village nestled between two mountains. On his first morning, he walked to the edge of the valley and shouted angrily at the sky, "Why is this place so cruel?" The mountain echoed back, "So cruel." So cruel, the traveler frowned and walked on. The next day, a woman visited the same valley. She bowed deeply and said, "Thank you for holding me," the valley whispered, "holding me. Holding me." The mountain gave back not what was asked, but what was offered. The monk looks into the open air around him, now filled with the invisible memory of echoed voices. So every arrow. He begins, "Every arrow," the master confirms, "is an intention." The monk turns this over in his mind. "I thought archery was about skill. It is about presence," the master replies. And presence is shaped by intention. He picks up an arrow and hands it to the monk. "Before you shoot," he says, "ask yourself, what am I sending into the world?" The monk walks to the center of the field. He places the arrow gently on the string. This time, he does not focus on the mark or even on his breath. He focuses on his heart. What is there? Not ambition, not frustration, but clarity. He draws. And as he does, he silently whispers, "Peace." He releases. The arrow flies straight, not perfect, not dramatic, but clean. A soft thunk, it lands in the straw, but what returns is not sound. What returns is stillness, peace, echoing inward. Later, by a small fire, the monk reflects aloud. "I never realized that each shot speaks," the master smiles. "It does. And the world listens." You too may begin to sense this truth in your own life. Every word you speak, every gesture, every thought, each is an arrow loosed into the fabric of reality. And though you may not always see where it lands, you will feel the echo. You may recall times you moved with love and love found you. Or times you sent harshness into the world and found it mirrored back. This is not judgment, it is rhythm, it is reflection. It is life responding to life. Some traditions say that the truest aim is not with the bow, but with the heart. That when your presence carries kindness, patience, and sincerity, then even your silence becomes a healing arrow. So now let your breath become your arrow. Let it carry compassion outward. Let the exhale be your soft message to the world. I am here with care, and notice what comes back. Let your body receive the echo. The monk, now seated beside the master, watches the fire. Its flames dance like quiet answers to questions never spoken aloud. "I want to send good arrows," the monk says finally. "You already are," the master replies, "just by listening." What if every action, every breath, every thought were an arrow and you were free at every moment to choose what message you send into the world? The night deepens, and with it a profound silence settles upon the world. The stars above shimmer like distant thoughts scattered across the sky's quiet canvas. Even the wind seems to pause, as if listening for something beyond sound, something older than words. The monk sits in meditation beneath the plum tree, the cool earth grounding him, the scent of fallen blossoms wrapping gently around his senses. He is alone, yet not lonely. Around him the darkness feels soft, alive, complete. His bow rests across his lap. He has not fired in hours, and he does not need to. In this stillness, something within him begins to dissolve, not painfully, but like ice melting into water. The desire to prove, to achieve, even to understand, quietly falls away. What remains is pure awareness. He opens his eyes. The world is the same. And yet, it isn't. He looks at the target across the field and for the first time sees nothing, not a goal, not a challenge, not a measure of worth. Just presence, a field, a shape. The target disappears. This is the Zen teaching of emptiness of form, the realization that what we believe to be solid, fixed, or necessary is often just a projection of our mind. In Buddhist thought, this is expressed in the concept of anyat, the idea that all things lack an inherent, separate identity. That the arrow, the target, the archer are not three things, but expressions of one flowing moment. Some traditions say that the moment we stop labeling, stop grasping, stop needing the world to be a certain way, we begin to see clearly. The master appears beside him, not with footsteps, but as though emerging from the very shadows themselves. He looks across the field where the target once stood. "Can you see it?" he asks. The monk nods slowly, and yet it's not there. The master's smile is subtle, like the curve of a crescent moon. "Then you are beginning to see," the monk turns to him. "If there's no target, why draw the bow?" "To see who draws it," the master answers. And here a deeper realization dawns, not as thought, but as experience. The monk is not the one drawing. There is no aim, no effort. There is only this breath, this hand, this motion. He draws without desire. He releases without thought. There is no arrow, and yet something flies. Later, he recounts the moment to the master, still uncertain of its meaning. The master replies with a story, his voice like wind over stone. A student asked the master, "When will I hit the target without trying?" The master said, "When there is no longer a target to hit, nor a self to hit it." The student frowned. "Then why practice?" The master replied, "So that one day, you will forget that you were practicing. This is not a rejection of form, but a transcendence of it. The bow, the arrow, the target, they are still there, but they are no longer rigid. They are no longer cages. They are vessels through which the moment flows. The monk walks now without direction, yet every step feels right. He carries the bow, not as a tool, but as a companion. He sees others in the monastery sweeping, pouring tea, tending the fire. And in each motion, he sees the same flow, the same absence of striving, the same fullness of presence. He bows to them, and they bow back. No words, just recognition. And you, here lying in your stillness, perhaps you begin to sense this truth too. You are not separate from the world around you. You are not aiming at life from a distance. You are life in motion, breath rising, thought drifting, body resting. There is no need to strike the mark. There is no mark, only the moment. Some traditions teach that enlightenment is not a thing to reach, but a veil to lift. And what lies beneath is not something new, but something ancient and always present. The monk returns to the training ground at dawn. The sky is pale and the plum blossoms fall like snow. He lifts the bow, not to hit, not to succeed, just to express the moment. He draws, breathes, releases, and smiles, not at where the arrow lands, but at how free he feels in letting it go. What if the target you've been seeking was never outside of you, but always within the silent center of your presence, waiting to be seen? The sun begins to rise, not as a blaze, but as a quiet unfolding soft light spilling across the horizon like water from a cracked bowl. Everything it touches turns to gold, the stones, the grass, the mist still clinging to the rooftops. And within that gentle glow, the monk walks with a mirror in his hands. It is not ornate, just a small circle of polished metal, worn smooth by age. It catches the morning light, reflecting sky and leaf, but not perfectly. Dust clings to its surface. The image is blurred. He kneels on the wooden porch outside his quarters and slowly begins to polish it. Each stroke is mindful, each breath slow. The master joins him, sitting without a word. For a while they simply polish two mirrors side by side, clearing dust neither hurriedly nor carelessly. At last the monk speaks. "I can't see clearly yet." The master nods. Then continue. This is the Zen teaching of clarity through practice, the understanding that insight does not always arrive as a sudden flash, but as the patient unveiling of what was always there. In Buddhist thought, this is often expressed as samatha calm abiding, the cultivation of stillness and attention, not to gain enlightenment, but to clear away what obscures it. Some traditions teach that the mirror is never broken, only dusty, that your true nature is always intact, and your work is not to become, but to remember. To illustrate, the master shares a quiet tale. A man sought out a sage to find truth. The sage gave him a mirror and told him to polish it every day. The man did so for years. One day he came to the sage and said, "I have seen no visions, no spirits." "No truth?" the sage asked. "What do you see when you look now?" The man replied, "Myself." Clearly, the sage smiled. Then the mirror has done its work. The monk listens and looks again into the mirror. He sees not a perfected self, not a master, not even a monk. He sees a face, tired, soft, real, and for the first time, he does not wish it to be different. Later, he returns to the field with bow in hand, the mirror resting in his robe. He does not aim, he does not draw. He simply sits beneath the same tree where he once longed to improve, to impress, to transcend. Now he just breathes. His thoughts arise, some gentle, some sharp. Memories, hopes, little flashes of doubt. But like the dust on the mirror, he watches them without clinging. One by one they pass. And what remains is presence. You too may feel the dust in your own life expectations that cloud the moment, judgments that blur the truth of who you are. But you are not broken. You are not lost. You are only covered for now. And even that is part of the path. Some teachings say that polishing the mirror is not about speed, but sincerity. That even when the dust returns in it, will you now know the way to clarity, attention, breath, compassion? The monk closes his eyes and sees nothing but feels everything, the bow across his lap, the earth beneath his knees, the mirror against his chest. He smiles. Not because the mirror is spotless, but because it reflects. Even now, especially now, you lie here, eyes closed, body resting, mind drifting, and yet something deep within you is polishing itself, gently, with every breath. There is no rush, only presence. Each moment a soft cloth, each breath a clearing. Each night of sleep, a quiet remembering. Let the dust fall. Let the light return. The monk walks again at dusk, mirror tucked into his robe, bow slung across his back, not as burden but as balance. He is no longer seeking clarity, he is practicing it. One step, one breath, one moment. What if the peace you long for is not found in changing who you are, but in gently polishing the mirror until you recognize your own reflection? The sky shifts once again, lavender melting into midnight blue. A hush descends upon the world, the kind of quiet that invites listening beyond sound. In this space between light and darkness, the monk walks a forest trail, worn smooth by the footsteps of those who came before and those who never returned. The air is cooler here, thicker, each step stirs the fallen pine needles in soft swirls. Shadows stretch across the earth like gentle reminders that even darkness has its place. Ahead, the path bends around a massive cedar tree, gnarled and hollow at the base. The monk pauses, placing a hand on the rough bark. His fingers rest on deep grooves carved by time and weather, not by force. From within the hollow trunk, a breeze stirs. It carries with it a low whisper, not words, but a sound that feels old, familiar, and full of meaning just beyond understanding. The master, who has followed quietly behind, steps beside him. "This tree is over 1,000 years old," he says. "Its heart hollowed by fire long ago, and yet it lives." The monk peers into the hollow. "How?" "It listened," the master replies. This is the Zen teaching of listening to life itself, the awareness that wisdom does not always arrive through thought or speech, but through attention to what is. In Buddhist practice, this is likened to deep presence being so completely here that even silence becomes a teacher. Some traditions say that trees are sages rooted in stillness, and the wind is a messenger for those who remember how to hear. The master tells a tale, his voice low and slow. A young man sought a wise teacher but was told he must first pass through the forest of voices. For days he walked, shouting his questions into the trees, but no answer came. Exhausted, he sat beneath a massive tree and wept in silence. And in that silence he heard it, a whisper not from above, but from within. The forest had always been speaking. He had simply been too loud to hear. The monk leans into the hollow of the cedar. The wind shifts again, brushing his cheek like the breath of an old friend. He hears nothing, and everything. The rustle of a squirrel, the crack of a distant branch, the steady thump of his own heartbeat. He closes his eyes and listens, not to learn, not to judge, just to receive. In that moment, something unspoken settles into him, an understanding too delicate for language, too true for proof. Later, as he and the master return to the temple grounds, the monk speaks. "I always thought the forest was quiet." The master nods, "Until you became quiet enough to match it." The monk smiles. "It was never silent. I was simply loud." You might remember moments like this, when the world seemed empty until you stopped trying to fill it. And then in the quiet, a truth emerged not as explanation, but as feeling, as knowing without needing to define. Some teachings remind us that the world is always offering us guidance, but we must become still enough to hear it. That presence is not silence, but participation, full, open, and receptive. You lie here now, and around you is a great stillness. But within it, there is movement, the rhythm of your breath, the faint hum of your body, the distant echoes of thought passing through like birds on a midnight wind. What do you hear? What has life been whispering that you might have missed? Not because you lacked wisdom, but because you were busy searching when all you needed was to listen. Let yourself soften now. Become quiet. And listen not just with your ears, but with your whole being. Let the air speak to your skin. Let the breath speak to your heart. Let this moment speak to your soul. The monk sits beneath the cedar again before bed, not asking questions, not waiting for signs, just listening. And in that listening he finds something rarer than answers. He finds connection. The wind no longer passes by him, it passes through him. And perhaps that is the point. What if the wisdom you seek has always been whispering not in words, but in the spaces between them, waiting for you to grow quiet enough to truly hear? The stars wheel slowly overhead, tracing invisible paths across the night sky. In the stillness between one breath and the next, a new chapter of the monk's journey begins not through effort, but through service. This evening he walks not toward the archery field, but down to the river that winds through the base of the valley. Lantern in hand, he steps lightly, guided by the soft burble of flowing water. At the riverbank stands an old ferryman, bent but not frail, his face etched with kindness, his hands steady on the oar. "May I cross with you?" the monk asks. The ferryman nods without a word and gestures toward the small wooden boat. The monk steps in, the vessel rocking gently beneath him. They drift out into the river, wrapped in darkness and the rhythmic creak of wood. For a long time neither speaks. Then the monk asks, "Do you ever grow tired of crossing back and forth day after day?" The ferryman smiles, dipping his oar again into the water. "I do not cross for myself," he replies. "I cross for the crossing." This is the Zen teaching of selfless service, the offering of your actions not for personal gain or recognition, but because the act itself becomes the path. In Buddhist philosophy, this echoes seva, the practice of spiritual service, a way of dissolving the illusion of separateness through compassionate presence. Some traditions say that when you serve without attachment, your life becomes an extension of peace itself. The ferryman tells a story, one he's shared many times, and yet it feels new in the telling. Once, a young warrior came to a river, seeking to cross. A storm had washed out the bridge. He called to a ferryman for help. "But I cannot pay you," said the warrior. The ferryman smiled. "Then cross for someone else when the time comes." Years later, the warrior, now older, quieter, helped a child across that same river. The circle closed, not with payment, but with compassion. The monk listens, letting the words ripple through him like the water beneath the boat. He thinks of all the time he has spent trying to improve himself, his aim, his discipline, his silence. But he sees now that the deeper practice is not about becoming better, but about becoming useful, to serve, to show up, to offer peace simply by being it. When they reach the far shore, the ferryman doesn't anchor, he simply waits. The monk steps onto the land and turns back. "Don't you ever rest?" he asks. The ferryman's eyes twinkle. "I rest in every crossing." Back at the monastery, the monk begins to offer his time differently. He sweeps the steps before others rise. He brings water to the kitchen. He tends the garden not because he must, but because something in him longs to give. And slowly something shifts. His movements grow simpler, his thoughts quieter. And yet, his heart feels fuller than ever. He carries his bow again, but with a new awareness. Not as a tool for self-mastery, but as something he can one day teach, something to pass on, not for pride, but for peace. You too may sense in yourself the quiet desire to serve, not to fix, or solve, or shine, but simply to be a gentle presence in a world that often rushes past its own reflection. Some teachings remind us that service begins not with grand gestures, but with attention, with presence, with the willingness to hold space for others, the way the river holds the boat, the way the ferryman holds the oar, the way the wind holds the breath. Tonight, as you lie still, ask yourself, where can I serve? Not out of obligation, but out of love. Where can I offer my presence as a gift? Even if it's just a smile, a pause, a listening ear, a moment of patience. These are all arrows too. You may not see where they land, but they matter deeply. The monk, under a sky streaked with morning light, helps another student with his form. He adjusts his stance, offers a kind word, a gentle correction. The student misses the target. The monk smiles. "Well done," he says. "You showed up." He remembers the ferryman's words, "I cross for the crossing." And now he teaches for the teaching, serves for the serving, lives for the living. What if your greatest act of mastery isn't in what you achieve, but in how gently you offer your presence to the world around you? The path bends once again, this time leading away from the temple's familiar walls. The monk walks beside the master in silence, their sandals brushing through fallen leaves. They are heading to a place rarely visited, Nestled in the upper gardens, a quiet stone circle where two small altars rest, one carved from featherlight marble, the other from dark, dense granite. Upon reaching the circle, the master gestures to a smooth wooden bench. The monk sits. The master kneels before the altars and places a single object on each, a feather on the white, a stone on the black. He then turns, eyes calm. "Hold them," he says. The monk picks up the feather. It floats easily in his palm, weightless, barely there. Then the stone, solid, cool, full of gravity. "Which one is heavier?" the master asks. The monk answers instinctively. "The stone," the master nods. "And yet?" He lifts the feather and holds it to his chest. "This too can burden, if held long enough." This is the Zen teaching of burden and release, the realization that weight is not always about mass, but about attachment. In Buddhist thought, this reflects the concept of updana clinging. It is not just what we carry, but how tightly we hold it that shapes our suffering. Some traditions teach that even the softest things, regret, longing, old dreams, can become heavy when we refuse to let them go. The master continues with a story, his voice steady and slow. A monk once traveled with his teacher across a long, dusty road. At a stream, they encountered a woman who could not cross. The teacher lifted her in his arms, carried her across, and continued walking. Hours later, the younger monk asked, "Why did you carry her?" "We are not to touch," the teacher replied. "I set her down at the stream. Why are you still carrying her?" The monk exhales softly, setting the stone back onto the altar. Then, after a pause, the feather, too. He realizes that both have weight if clutched, and both offer freedom if released. He looks up at the master. "I've been carrying things I thought were light," he admits. The master nods. "Many do." The monk rises. "How do I know when it's time to let go?" The master gestures toward the sky. "When your hands want to open more than they want to hold." They walk back through the garden as the morning sun filters through bamboo leaves. The monk's steps feel different now, not because the path has changed, but because he has. You may now consider your own burdens, those things you thought were harmless, perhaps even noble, a memory, a role, a standard you've held yourself to for years. What if even the gentle burdens can weigh down your spirit when carried too long? Some teachings remind us that release is not the same as abandonment. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It means honoring what has been and then freeing yourself from its grip. The monk returns to his room and opens a wooden box. Inside are old letters, drawings, records of his progress, marks of where he thought he had failed and where he thought he had triumphed. One by one, he sets them on the table. He bows to each. Then, in the garden fire pit, he burns them slowly, mindfully, watching the flame accept each one without judgment. The smoke rises. He does not feel lighter all at once, but he feels space. And in that space, peace begins to bloom. You too may feel the invitation to open your hands, to loosen your grip, to bow to what once served you, and to allow the wind to carry it away. Breathe with that now. Let your body settle. Let your thoughts soften. Let whatever you've been holding have a moment to rest. Even if you pick it back up tomorrow, let it be weightless tonight. The monk walks into the evening air, his robe catching the breeze like a sail. The master meets him with a smile. "You seem lighter," he says. "I think I am," the monk replies. "And what will you do with this lightness?" The monk looks at the path ahead. "Walk with it." What if the freedom you long for is waiting not in carrying more, but in gently setting down even what feels light when the time has come? The air turns still, as if the world itself pauses to take a breath. You walk now into a clearing bathed in pale moonlight, the grass whispering softly beneath your feet. The sky is vast above, but it no longer feels distant. It feels near, as if you could stretch out your hand and touch the quiet between stars. In the center of the field, the master stands with a single arrow in hand but no bow. He holds it loosely, like a reed, turning it slowly between his fingers. The monk approaches, puzzled. "Where is your bow?" The master smiles. "Tonight I don't need it." He gestures for the monk to sit. The monk obeys, curiosity alive in his eyes. What can be done with an arrow, without a bow? The master does not answer directly. Instead, he offers the arrow to the monk. "Feel it," he says. The monk cradles it carefully. Its shaft is smooth, balanced. The fletching delicate, the point sharp and true. But it cannot fly, the monk says. The master shakes his head gently. It flies only if you believe the bow is the only way. This is the Zen teaching of intention without force, the understanding that sometimes presence alone carries more power than effort. In Buddhist thought, this reflects the essence of non-doing, or Wu Wei, action that arises not from control, but from harmony with the moment. Some traditions believe that when your heart is fully aligned with purpose, your presence alone becomes the arrow. To illustrate, the master shares a story that drifts like a feather through the night. There was a boy who lived in a mountain village where no one had bows, yet he dreamt of flying arrows. One day, he carved a branch into the shape of an arrow and threw it with his bare hand. It flew only a little. But he practiced each day not with force but with feeling. In time, his throws became longer, truer. People began to watch. "But you have no bow," they said. He smiled. "My aim is not to strike, but to express," and his arrows became poetry in the air. The monk listens, eyes wide. He looks at the arrow in his hand differently now, not as a tool to hit something, but as an extension of something within. "So what matters," he says, "isn't how far it goes, but where it comes from," the master finishes. Later that night, the monk walks through the monastery's halls, holding the arrow. He stops by the window of a younger student struggling with his form, his posture rigid, frustration clouding his face. The monk kneels beside him and places the arrow in his hands. "Before you draw," he says gently, "feel what you're offering, not just what you're trying to hit." The student closes his eyes, holding the arrow like a prayer. No bow, no target, just the stillness between them. You may think now of all the ways you've tried to achieve, to aim, to launch your life forward. You've drawn many strings, loosed many arrows, but what if your presence itself is already the message? Some teachings say that when your intentions are clear and your actions arise from love rather than fear, even a glance, a word, or a pause can reach farther than the sharpest point. You are not required to always push, always strive. Sometimes, to sit in your truth, to stand in your stillness, is to fly farther than force ever could. Let yourself soften into that now. You are not failing when you pause. You are not behind when you rest. You are not lost when you no longer see the target. You are the arrow already in flight, and the path is unfolding beneath you with each breath. The monk, seated beneath the stars, presses the arrow gently into the earth, a symbolic planting. "Let this be my message," he whispers. The master, watching, bows. Not to the arrow, but to the one who released it, without ever letting it fly. What if the truest power lies not in how hard you strive, but in how deeply you trust the presence you bring to each moment, even without a bow? The moon has reached its peak now, casting silver light across the quiet stones and dark rooftops of the monastery. Shadows stretch long, but they are no longer ominous. They are soft and familiar, companions to the light. You walk gently along a garden path lined with lanterns, their glow subtle, like the breath of a sleeping world. The monk walks too, this time alone, bow in hand. But something has shifted, not in the bow, or in his stance, but in his way of seeing. He stops before a small clearing, the one used only in deepest night. The sky above is a sea of stars. No target has been set. He kneels, draws, waits, no candle. No torch, only moonlight, only quiet. He cannot see the path of the arrow clearly. He cannot judge its arc. He cannot even be sure it will fly true, and yet he draws the bow. Not in defiance of the dark, but in companionship with it. He breathes, and he releases. This is the Zen teaching of illumination without clarity, the understanding that even when the way is dim, your inner light can still guide the arrow. In Buddhism, this reflects the essence of trust in practice to move forward not because all is clear, but because you have made peace with not knowing. Some traditions teach that faith is not the absence of uncertainty, but the willingness to act in harmony with the present even when the outcome cannot be seen. The monk does not wait for the sound of impact. He bows, knowing the flight was enough. Later, he speaks with the master under the plum tree. "I couldn't see the target," he says, "but I trusted the breath." The master nods. "And was that enough?" Yes, the monk replies. Then you saw more than your eyes could. The master tells a story faint and old as wind on parchment. A woman traveled across a desert at night. She had no lamp, no stars, only the sound of her feet and the pull of her heart. Others warned her to wait for sunrise. But she walked anyway, listening, sensing, trusting. At dawn she arrived at a village nestled in golden cliffs. They asked her, "How did you find the way in darkness?" She said, "I carried the light within." The monk listens, his eyes reflecting starlight. He remembers all the times he delayed his practice, waiting for better weather, better tools, more certainty. But now he sees that the conditions were never the problem, the hesitation was. Now he knows, practice is not what we do when everything is right. Practice is how we become right with everything. You may sense this in your own life, the moments when you paused, not because you needed to, but because you feared the unknown, the dark, the uncertainty. But what if you could move anyway? Not recklessly, not blindly, but with softness, with breath, with trust. Some teachings remind us, the moon does not fight the dark, it shines within it. And you, too, have that light, even when things are unclear. Especially then, so now, lie back into your own darkness. Feel the soft night holding you, let go of needing to see what's next. Just breathe. Draw the bow within your chest, release. You don't need to know where the arrow will land. The flight itself is sacred. The monk walks the path in moonlight, no longer needing direction. He has become the guide, each step is quiet. Each breath a lantern, each doubt a lesson in light. What if you don't need to see the path clearly to walk it well, only to trust the light you carry in your own steady breath? The monastery lies quiet now, wrapped in the deep stillness that comes just before dawn. Even the wind has settled into silence, and the stars begin their slow retreat, yielding the sky to a softening gray. The world feels as if it is holding its breath, waiting not for noise, not for action, but for presence. The master archer sits beneath the same tree where his own teacher once sat. His robe folds gently around him like a second skin, and his hands rest open in his lap. He is not holding a bow, nor an arrow. He holds only stillness. The monk approaches. He walks slowly, reverently, as one who has traveled far, not in distance, but in understanding. He bows deeply. The master opens his eyes. "You've come far," he says. "I've stopped aiming," the monk replies. The master smiles. "Then you are ready to rest." This is the Zen teaching of rest as part of the way, the wisdom that even the greatest efforts, the deepest insights, must yield to stillness. In Buddhist philosophy, samadhi, the state of deep meditative absorption, is not the reward for practice, but part of the path itself. Some traditions remind us that the awakened ones still sleep. The masters still sit. That quietness is not a retreat from the path, but a return to it. The master shares his final story, his voice like mist rolling off the mountains. A man climbed a great mountain in search of truth. For years he climbed through storms and sun, hunger and joy. At the summit he found an old woman sleeping beside a fire. He waited, uncertain whether to speak. Finally she opened one eye and said, "Sit, eat, then sleep." "But I came for answers," he said. She smiled. "You came to rest?" The monk kneels, the grass cool beneath his knees. He no longer seeks the target, nor the shot. He seeks only to sit, to breathe, to be. The bow lies beside him, not abandoned, honored. It has done its work. It has carried him through the forest of thought, across the river of striving, into the clearing of peace. You too are invited now into this final ease. There is nothing more to do. No aim to perfect, no lesson to master, only this breath, this soft return. Let your shoulders release their burden. Let your jaw unclench, let your hands open. You have walked the path with care. You have loosed your arrows, some flying true, some falling short, but all part of the way, and now you rest. Some teachings say that in deep rest, the final wisdom reveals itself, that everything you sought was always within you. That the one who draws, the one who releases, and the one who receives are not three, they are one. The monk lies back in the grass, gazing at the sky now tinged with soft blue. He no longer needs a target. He no longer needs a bow. He has become the field, the breath, the silence. The master closes his eyes and joins him. and the world, for a moment, is complete. What if the highest form of mastery is not in perfect aim, but in knowing when to lower your bow, close your eyes, and simply rest in the wholeness of being? The final veil of night lifts, and with it comes the soft blush of morning roses, golds and pale whites stretching gently across the sky like a monk's first smile after long silence. The temple bell does not ring, and yet all of nature seems to bow as if it had. The sparrows begin their songs. The light spills through the trees. The dew glistens like stars made small and near. The monk rises slowly from where he has slept beneath the plum tree, robes damp with morning mist, hair tousled by dreams. There is no urgency in his movements now. No rush to retrieve the bow, no need to practice, correct, or prove. He walks barefoot toward the training grounds, where a single arrow stands upright in the center of the field, planted, not fired. It had not been placed there by him. It simply is, and that, he knows, is enough. This is the Zen teaching of wholeness, without striving, the realization that all paths lead not to something new, but back to what has always been complete. In Buddhist thought, this is the essence of Tathagata, thus come, or thus gone, the nature of reality itself, present beyond change, birth, and death. Nothing missing, nothing to gain. Some traditions say that the final step is the first step remembered, the place you began, seen with new eyes. The monk approaches the arrow. He does not draw it from the ground. He bows to it because he no longer needs it to fly. The master joins him, their steps quiet in tandem. They look out at the field together. You've walked a long path, the master says. And come back to where I started, the monk replies. But now, the master says gently, you can see it, the monk nods. There was never anything to strike, was there? No, only something to meet. And the perfect shot? The master places a hand over his heart. Here, always. You lie now in your own quiet clearing, surrounded not by forest, but by breath. Not by stories, but by the still resonance they've left behind. There is nothing left to chase, no mark to hit. You've become the archer and the arrow, the path and the pause, the flight and the field. The monk walks away from the grounds for the last time, bow slung across his back like a memory. He does not look over his shoulder, he does not need to. What he sought was never behind him, nor ahead. It was in his breath, his steps, the silence between thoughts. It was the journey itself, and so it is with you. Wherever you are now, as you lie still, consider, you've traveled through wind and stillness, through effort and surrender, through questions that unraveled and answers that returned as quiet. And in all of it, you've been whole. From the very beginning. Let that truth rest within you like a hand upon your chest. Let your body be the field. Let your breath be the bow. Let your awareness be the arrow. And now let all of it return to stillness. What if everything you've been seeking has already arrived, and all that's left now is to receive it? And now, dear one, there is nothing more to do. Let the teaching settle into the soil of your being like rain absorbed by thirsty roots. Let your mind rest, not because every question has been answered, but because you've grown content with not needing them to be. Allow the last traces of thought to drift like mist along a quiet hillside, weightless, slow, dissolving. Feel your breath in this moment not as effort, but as a gentle tide returning home. Each inhale, a soft arrival. Each exhale, a release of everything you no longer need to carry. Notice how your body sinks deeper into stillness with each breath. Your shoulders unwinding, your jaw softening, your hands open and free. There is no past to revisit now. No future to prepare for. Only this moment, stretched wide and calm like the surface of a still lake under moonlight. If thoughts come, let them pass as clouds. If feelings rise, let them rest gently on the breath. You are held by the earth beneath you, by the silence around you, by the wisdom within you. Let yourself float. Let yourself drift. Let yourself dream. And as you do, carry these teachings into your sleep not as burdens, but as feathers, as warmth, as wholeness. You've traveled far, but you were never alone. May your dreams carry you gently across the sky like a silent arrow already in flight. And may peace meet you wherever you land.